Sorry. So, hello, I'm Alpha, the garden table manager at the Open Door. I know some of you, not all of you. This is Cynthia, and she is generously sharing her basic canning skills with us today. She's going to do a little demonstration. So, we're going to video this for people who are not able to be here right now. So, if you don't want to be in it, come back here.
Okay.
So, I'm not a pro, so if you have, but I want to try to answer your questions as best as I can. Some of the main canning that I do at my house is that we make salsa every year, so tomato juices. But I also can a lot of our meats, like chicken and beef, and then like sometimes I'll have like a big slab of meat, like a roast, and then I'll chop that up and put them in jars. Anyway, so sometimes when our freezer is getting so full, like you mentioned in your freezer is getting full, you know, an easy way to get things out of the freezer and on the shelf is canning. There are two methods. One is called a water bath. Now, if this is my pressure canner, but typically a water bath will look similar to that. And you literally could do the water bath in here also. Today, I'm gonna give you just a handout of the things we're going over today. I suppose I could just pass it down. So one of the first things, and I'll grab that, I'm going to actually read it because it talks about hibachulism. And that's one of the things that canning and preserving, you want to make sure you get rid of any possibility of that ever happening. And just in our environment, it naturally happens. So if you don't process your food according to the directions, that's one of the things you'd worry about. So that's interesting. And then the other thing is I can my tomatoes, but it is I think it's a high acid, or one of them anyway. So with that, you don't necessarily have to pressure can it, like that's overkill. But I still do it. I just do them all that way. Have any of you ever done, you know, canning, pressure canning, or do you use, you had mentioned water bath. So this is going to be kind of new for you guys. Okay. Well, let me just show you some of the tools we use. One is a big pot. Pressure canners tend to be real thick. The other water bath kind tend to be a little bit thinner, just physically. One of the things is when you have your jars in here, and when you're done processing and you pull off this lid, it's hot. So the thing that you probably have seen at garage sales or anyway is this, and this just goes in and you're able just to pull it out without burning yourself. Another thing that when we pull stuff out of a canner, I make sure I have like a big board or something that the heat won't bother. Like I don't put it on my counter because I get a big breadboard out. And if sometimes we do canning where all our kids, they love being a part of this. We might do, you know, 150 jars, so we're processing them a lot. And then I have to have my husband get like a 4x8 sheet of wood out just so that it can be not burn anybody. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry I'm late.
Here, I'm going to give you, just because if more people come, you could just kind of give a handout. So So basically, this, you'll need jars. Like some people like things in small jars, you can have bigger ones. But the most important thing when you start canning, you need to get these jars hot. So like I always throw them in the dishwasher and I run them over. So it's all warm, everything's hot. So when you're putting warm things in these jars, it won't crack or bust or whatever. So there's this thing about heating up, making sure, like some people I was reading about, they will put them in an oven. And I thought, well, that's interesting, just to keep them at a warmer temperature. So, but I just throw them in the dishwasher. So that's kind of what I do. Now, when it comes to the lids, let me just say, about 2 years ago, something happened in the COVID happened, but you could not get good lids here locally. And then, so we ended up buying lids, but I think they came from China, and they did not work. I thought, what a bummer.
I was gonna mention that, I did the same thing, I bought some off brands and go with the name brand.
Go with the name brand, and yeah, and so, made in the U.S. is a good choice. But yeah, we ran into so many problems that year. Lost quite a few things, but anyway, so having, these come with lids. Now with us, this is how they originally come, you know, in a package like this, where you get not only the round, you get the lid also. And once you have these will last over and over. Like I still have them on here now, but we pull them off. And then when time comes for more canning, we'll just reuse them. So eventually, if you got all your lids, you just need to buy, or you've got these covers, then you just have to buy that. So it's a little bit cheaper. And it can be, this thing can be reused year after year. One thing, if you have a dishwasher, I wouldn't put them in there. They seem to rust. I don't know why. So hand wash with that. What else do I have? One of the tools we use a lot is this. Now, has anyone ever made regular salsa? So, and you probably don't, you probably just chop everything up and go for it. One thing that we do, just a little different, is we will separate. So when we cook up all of our tomatoes, we just wash them and then cut them and then we get them going. So it takes about 10 or 15 minutes of this boiling to get them to the place where everything's kind of like mush, you know, almost. Then I will put them in here first, and I get all of the juice out, and that's where we get our juices. And so then this stuff that's left in here is kind of thick, pulpy, and that's what we make our salsa out of. One of the tools I don't have on me, I wasn't going to bring it out, I'm just going to mention it, is once we get this pulp, kind of real thick tomato, I put it in my blender. Some people, when they make like tomato juice or salsa, they'll peel the outside of the tomato, and it's like, I don't want to do that. It takes too long. So putting it in a blender just pulverizes it, and then I put it in a bowl. So these are the tools that I'm using that whole time, and it's quite a production, because once the juice is made, we for our juice, we take the tomato, but we also take an onion and we pulverize it in the blender, and then we mix the juice with, like, we have a little bit of Worcester sauce in there, just adds a little something. We add a little bit of heat. We like hot peppers. So we'll get this to a place where I can say it's a kind of a kick. Like if you aren't used to our hot stuff, it might be shocking. But what do we use a lot of our juices for? When we make soups. If I do a roast, I always throw this in because it adds a real nice heat and flavor, and so that's kind of where we go with our juices. I'm going to run through my recipe that of making salsa. Does anybody have any questions?
How long do those take and how long can you save them?
According to the books, they say canned goods can last a few years. I have stuff that's 4 years old and I'm still using it. So it's a preference, but according to the manual, and you're gonna get, it's called Basic Canning Manual that you'll get through the email. You can look at that and it'll have, you know, times and different things that you gotta follow. So when it comes to salsa, and I kind of adjusted this, anyway, I'll tell you what I do. I peel a whole bunch of, not peel, and that's copy and paste. I do not peel tomatoes, but I put the tomatoes in there, and I don't, you know, do it by cups. I just fill it up and get it going, just because I want to get through it. The thing that I do at home is I have a little chopper. Have you ever seen those choppers where you stick it in there and you just hit it? Okay, that's what I kind of use for my onions and my peppers, which I use for making salsa. So it's all kind of uniform. And if you kind of look here, I don't know, you can see there's chunks. You can kind of see it's a thicker salsa versus loose, you know. Now I use Thai chili peppers. Let me tell you, sometimes people put jalapeno peppers. Jalapeno pepper is kind of a peppery flavor, meaning it's more like a black pepper in a way. It gives you that kind of it covers all the flavors. So if you have onions and tomatoes, you're not gonna taste the tomato and onion as well. So we use Thai peppers, and the reason we do is because then you can taste the onions, you can taste the tomato, and get the full flavor of what you're making. So just to know, if you look out there, I'm not sure what the heat quality, you know, for a jalapeno is. Sometimes you can get pretty weak ones, sometimes very hot. So, but the one that we use, the Thai chilies tend to be, it's called 50,000. You know, I think Ghost or whatever, way up. So it's more, you got to kind of go with what you feel would be in your best. Some people can't handle a lot of pepper flavor, you know, so that will change. For us, we do a lot. So, and then salt and pepper and a little bit of Worcestershire sauce is kind of our recipe. I don't have any vinegar, so I found out white vinegar is a wheat product, but I did not know that. I have one of my granddaughters lived with me for a while. She's celiac, so you gotta be real careful with everything. Well, I had no idea that salsa with a little bit of white vinegar is a wheat product, and she loved my tacos. And at that time, I didn't have my salsa. I had what I could get at Aldi, and then but we always have tacos at least once a week, and she never feel good after it. And then I found out like 2 weeks before they were finally they were moving from one state to another, and I found out that, and I thought, oh my gosh, this whole summer, because I had her for like 3 months, I put her through, like her tummy wasn't feeling good, and then I learned about white vinegar. So I don't put vinegar in my salsa. Some people probably do. But once the tomatoes have been processed, you know, they're all kind of liquidy and clumpy or whatever, then they go in here, and the juice is put away over in another bowl, and then the pulp is gone through the food process, or the blender, and then that's put in here. Then I do follow the amount of chopped green bell peppers, and the onions are pretty much the same. So putting them in here, and this bowl just gets really, really full. And then we just you know, add enough salt and pepper to taste. You know, some people probably like a little bit more. Anyway, we kind of taste test. Is it hot enough, or is it not hot enough? Although I have to say, my mom and dad live with us, and this past year I've noticed that their heat level is going down. So this year when we did our first process, I said, Joe, let's just do it with less heat. And it still has a kick. So anyway, so that's kind of what I do. And then once you've got the mix, its flavor is good, then you're putting it in jars. And you have to, when you fill a jar, you're supposed to always leave a ½ inch, you know, from the top. And once we get a whole bunch going, I take the lids and I put them in hot water. So your lid needs to be hot when you're putting it on your jar. It helps seal it. So how I do it is I get a bowl, I put water in it, put it in the microwave, so it's really hot. And then I pull it out and I throw these, and the way I do it, I go this way, and the reason I kind of go up and down like that is because when we're in this bowl and I got my little tongue, I'm trying to pull it out. If they're all lined up like this, it's just harder. Yeah. So that was just a thing that I just go back and forth, and it's a little easier to get out of there. So you want these to be hot, yeah?
So when you put it in the microwave, you put water in the bowl, or just the lids in the bowl? With
no lids. Just the water and the bowl.
Oh, in the bowl, okay.
Once that's hot, then I take my lids and I put them in the bowl. And according to the directions, it probably will say make sure they've been in the hot water for about 30 seconds. But honestly, we just get going, stick them on there. And the one thing I have my husband do is do these lids really hard, because I just don't have the strength that he does to tighten it up. Once it's tightened up, then you can put it in your canner. Usually it's 7 of these big quarts. And then the little ones, I think we can get about 8. So it's not a lot more. It still takes the time. But then we take one of these, fill it with just water, and pour the whole quart of water in the bottom of your canner. Because when you have a canner, like if you were doing water bath, you would just put your jars in there, fill up the water so that the water's above all the produce that you have. But when you can with a pressure canner, you only need one of these quarts. So the water will be down about here, and that will allow it to just start heating up. You kind of hear it. One of the things that you have to do when you have a pressure canner, well, let me tell you, this is a good reminder. This here is the little ring, and you actually put it in here. Now when the canner gets going, for some reason this fits a lot better. It just, after the first time you use it, it just must, I don't know, I'm gonna say, get a little tighter, and it stays in. When this is dry, like it is, and we haven't used it now for a while, it just pops out. But every canner will have one of those, one of these rings in it. And that's really to help the seal, you know. But when you get it get it on here, you're gonna notice a couple things. One is, one of these on, I guess this one doesn't, this one you have to seal off, but sometimes these are removable, you know. And you put that on, because this allows pressure to build. There's also on the top of this, you'll notice this, it's kind of a vent. And as it's starting, you'll see this pop up, and then all of a sudden, everything will start working. So it's a release. Here is where you watch. And at our house, we do not have like a stove that keeps it going at the right temp. We sit there, we play games, we're watching it. We might have to turn the stove down a little bit, because you're gonna notice on here, I'm going to bring it around. This tells you what the pressure's up to, but there's a bad part. If it gets too hot, it could blow. So that's kind of, and I had that happen once. So you can kind of see the gauge. Most of the time we're working at 10 pounds, maybe 15, but I have a gas, and I was over at my friend's house who had a gas stove, and we were showing her how to can, and her stove worked perfectly. And I thought, well, what's with that? I don't know. Something's up with mine. It just isn't. It's, you know, with us, you got to put it down, put it up, put it down. You know, we're just baby in it. But when I had my first daughter, we were doing some canning in the kitchen, and I don't know what I was thinking. I was probably very deprived of sleep. I put it on, and I went into the dining room, and about 5 minutes later, it blew, and it was tomatoes. I mean, the ceiling, the walls, everything got tomato, which the best thing about that was, number one, I learned how dangerous it can be, but I was so thankful that I was not in that room. So it's like, thank you, Lord. Oh, because it would have been a disaster, and I had this little baby anyway. So I learned, you baby this. The other day, we did do a run. Someone came over. My husband decided he would try canning out in the garage. So my whole house would get, one of the things that happens at our house when I can, you end up having to clean everything, you know, cupboards, you know, this'll, you know, spray up here on the floor. So he decided he'd go out in the garage, which, you know what, I think this is a good place to do canning. But we were just sitting out in the front by our garage door, and I heard this noise, and I did not know that he had turned it on. I go, Joe, what is that? And he goes over there, and it was getting to the danger. I thought, oh my gosh, thank God I was out here, because I don't think he would have heard it. Anyway.
Did you use the camp stove? Out of the garage, or what did you use?
We bought this. You hook it to a propane. It looks just like the top of a gas stove. So, you know. Anyway, that's what we're.
A burner.
Yeah, a burner. Yeah. So that's what we're. You know, the thing is, the nice thing in the house, you can have 2 of these going all the time. You know, when you're doing a lot. So, now you're gonna get in your manual that you'll get later today. It has a lot of this stuff, and I wanted just to kind of go through that with you, because this is kind of, now I took the tomato vegetable one because that's kind of the closest thing. On the top, it shows if you were to do a water bath, you know, just make sure you cover those jars. But it'll say, you know, we're somewhere, I would say, between 1,000. I don't think I know if you went up north, up by Duluth, it's a little over 1,000. So I figured we're somewhere. Maybe that second one. And it says with pints, you know, you water bath them for about 40 minutes, which is a long time. Now, here, I do the 10-pound for my pressure canning, and that's the bottom in a weighted gauge pressure canner. Well, I wonder really what the difference is. So, and we do it for about 15 minutes. So it's a little bit shorter time. But when you start this canner and you put your water in it and all your jars, it takes maybe 10 minutes for the pressure to get to the place where it starts to show. So there's a delay, and then your processing time.
And you said you can only do 1 jar at a time.
No, I can get about 7 of these jars.
Okay.
And I think you could get about 8. Now I have another canner at home that it says you can do double stacking with the pints. I thought, well, we'd still just do 1 double, but it's possible.
What's the difference between the dial gauge and the weighted gauge?
Good question. I don't know that answer.
So which one is that?
I go by the bottom, so I call it the weighted gauge. But is it? I don't know. We've just done this for years. We get it up to about 10 pounds to 15 right in there, and then we process it. So, but we have, mine are old, so we really have to watch it, you know. Now I have this Instapot, which is kind of nice because you literally can just turn it on and it doesn't, you don't have to worry about it. But of course, you can't put jars and stuff in there, you know.
You can.
Well, you can?
You can. I was wondering if you've done it. I've only used the little tiny like jelly.
Yeah?
The smaller than that.
Yeah.
And I only did 4 of them at a time, but it worked. I was just like, please don't break. I didn't, you know what I mean? I didn't want them to break inside there, and they didn't.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that, I'm glad you brought that up, because when I am putting all my jars, I try to make sure that they're not touching each other. You know, I just kind of work it so that they're not touching each other. We have, not every year, but every once in a while, we'll have one jar that blows. And I think possibly it's just getting to be an old jar or something. And it was,
They're not perfect.
yeah.
They're not all perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I do. And then when like I mentioned, I do meat. That's a really handy thing to do. If you do meat, the recipe I use is put the meat in there. I put some salt, but I'll put garlic, and I might throw a hot pepper in there, just one. And then again, fill it with water, you know, up to, leave it a half. But when you process meat, you have to watch this puppy for 90 minutes. So it's a longer process for meat. And I think somebody did explain, I thought, why do you have to do it that long? But it has to do with getting everything out, and
Is that cooking the meat or just preserving it? I guess some meat.
it does both. You know, in fact, it says like on the directions you're supposed to sear all the meat, you know. I don't. I just,
We've always done it raw.
yeah.
We've always used raw meat.
And it's just fine.
Yeah.
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 So, but that is a nice thing, you know, like that's why we bought that burner because we thought if we lose electricity and we gotta get that food out of the freezer, we're gonna do our meat and our vegetables and whatever, just process it all. So, I mean, it's a way not to lose everything that's in your freezer, so. It'd be quite the production, yeah.
So what if you don't have one of those can or pressure things? You have just a big pot with a rack in it.
Then it would be just called water bath, which is your top.
Okay.
So you'll cover the water above, and then you will process for a longer time. But you don't have to really worry about the pressure gauge or blowing, because it's just boiling and.
Do you use a penny that was like the best thing I've ever learned, is you put a penny in the bottom of either your
Yeah.
pressure cooker or I use a water bath.
I've heard that too.
And the penny will start to rattle when it starts to boil, and that's when you start your time.
Oh.
Oh,
Cool.
no, I always wait
Because
till
you
it hits
don't-
the poundage, that's when
I know, but we don't use poundage when we do a water bath.
Oh, water bath,
You know
sure,
what I mean?
yeah, that's a great idea.
But it tells you, you just listen
I think
for it.
Dad used to do that too.
Yeah, it works.
That's
We
cool.
can go on, it's cheap.
Water bath, anything.
I water bath everything. I don't have a pressure canner unless I do my Instapot, which I just did jam, so it's like,
That's
I thought that was pretty safe,
Yeah,
you know?
and
But
if it worked. And then when you did your Instapot, what was your, how did you tell it?
It was right in the directions in the book.
Okay.
Just went with the book.
So, okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was the only example they had was a jam. And I'm sure if you Googled it, there'd be lots more.
yeah. And was there a setting that you put, or,
You know, I just did the manual
okay,
one, cause mine wasn't fancy enough. to
I
have-
suppose, and you just put in the minutes and it takes care of you.
Yeah, cause I think the higher end ones have that setting, but mine is kind of.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions?
I was gonna ask about the pounds, so when they go up to these pounds, are they talking about the jar pounds?
No, we're talking about this, and on here, it's on the gauge, and this is it. So it'll have like 5, 10, 15. So, and that's where, and so you're watching it, just so it, till it hits that. Now, every once in a while, you come upon a pressure canner that somebody's trying to get rid of. That's how I ended up with 3. And I actually, somebody emailed me this year and said, do you want another one? We found another one, and I thought, no, I have 3, that's enough. But they're out there. A lot of people haven't gone to the pressure canning, they probably water bath. Do you have any other good questions?
So with the water, so I'm just trying to kind of get more of an understanding of the what we're supposed to use for the, I guess which one is better to use, the pressure one or just the regular?
They
What
do-
about price wise? Maybe there's
Oh, the water's way cheaper.
Oh,
yeah,
water, yeah,
Unless you find one at a garage sale,
yeah,
or someone just lets you borrow theirs, or.
yeah. Yeah, so your water bath, you could just go to the hardware store, Menards, whatever, and I don't even know what they go, but I'm gonna say $20, under
You
$20.
find them at garage sales all the time.
They what?
Garage sales
You
all the
really?
time. Yes. Or Goodwill, one of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or clean out your parents' house.
Yes.
You can have theirs.
Yeah, so they're handy. So water bath's really cheap. It's something you don't need a lot of fancy stuff with, and it can be done at your convenience. Yeah.
Do you use the little one?
The water-
sticky thing. That round, do you have to have that, a new one every time?
Oh, the gasket?
Or yeah,
No,
or can you use
No.
them over?
you know.
No, on the jar.
On the jar.
Oh, on the jar.
Yeah,
Okay, every year you have to buy a brand new lid.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
This is the only thing you can reuse because it's just cranking them down. And actually, there's no reason to even keep them on your jar when you store them. I mean, I just do it because I have plenty. But yeah, these are what you're gonna buy brand new. And, oh, get this. Let's say you run a batch and you let things cool down. But 2 of them do not go down. Like, these all will pop down in the center.
Yeah, show us the noise.
Well,
What, on a new,
so, and oftentimes you'll hear them. You'll hear it pop. And then it's like, oh, good. But if they don't pop, can you hear that? It's kind of loud.
you just hear it.
Yeah, you'll just hear this. And then you know that it's good. Now, I went in my storehouse today. I found 2 jars that I was, pulling out. And one seal was bubbled. I thought, well, that's a bad one. And then I looked at one, the seal was good, but I looked at it, I thought, something's wrong with that one, so I'm gonna throw that out too. But anyway, if you run your whole process and you have one that doesn't go down when it's cooled off, you need to reprocess the whole thing, Or just eat it. Yeah. I know sometimes you get so tired, like I'm not gonna do it. But then you need to reprocess for the same amount of time with, so, and honestly, I would say I always have maybe 4 or 5 out of 100 jars. So it does happen.
So you said don't keep the twist on there, just
No.
to store?
You don't have to. I mean, these, like this is 2020, and this is 2022, and I just kind of left them on there. But these, you can literally just take these off and put them away. So then these can be reused,
That's helpful. I've always thought that you keep the twist on.
Yeah, and it's called being lazy, I just So yeah, that's kind of how that goes. Any other good questions? Now, you can do green beans, or whatever's in your garden, corn, any vegetable can be done. Like I talked a little bit about meat. Another thing we do is sometimes if we go fishing and we have a lot of northern, they tend to have bones. It depends on how they fillet them, but if there's ones with bones, we'll put them in the jar and we'll process them because it disintegrates the bones and we'll have fish tacos. I mean, that's just one way to, yeah. So, and especially sometimes kids don't like the bones, I don't want to pick it out, whatever. But that's another thing we do is just can a bunch of fish. We don't tend to have a lot, but every once in a while it's kind of handy.
So with the meat, you have to put water in there too? Okay.
Yeah, and so you put the meat, even if it's ground beef, let's say, put it in there, you add the water up to the, about just ½ an inch, and then you just process them for the time that it says.
So when it's time to eat, it's already cooked?
It's all cooked. So for example, I have 1 quart jar, I just saw this the other day, that has been all cut up in little bitty chunks. It's all cooked, and we were gonna head north, and my husband said, why don't we just bring 1 of our quarts, and then we could throw it together. You could make beef stroganoff, you could make whatever you want with that meat. It's cooked. So,
And
now,
for hot dishes or like chili, or soups or stroganoff, we always use our venison.
Yeah.
We just cut it like in ribbons and use it for stroganoff.
What
Yeah.
about the seasonings? Like, do you add the seasonings in there, or?
I usually do garlic. I just do garlic on everything.
yeah, I do the same thing. Salt, garlic, and I'll throw a hot pepper in there.
Okay.
That's what I do.
But you can add seasonings?
Yes.
You can, yeah. But then it becomes like, if you do like spaghetti sauce, you'll have your different seasonings, and then you're gonna have to write spaghetti sauce so that it's, okay, that has all those kind of seasonings in it. Whereas mine's kind of general, I can switch recipes depending on what I want. But yeah.
So you can add garlic and onion.
Yeah. This year I'm doing something new. I've got a lot of cucumbers coming in. So I am just making I call them refrigerator pickles, where you throw different seasonings. We even put carrots, we put zucchini in them. We just add a bunch, and then you add a little bit of vinegar and water, and my daughter puts a little sugar in it. And I think that's psychological, but I don't know. It probably does something good for you. So anyway, we've been trying those. trying those out this year. But I think I'm gonna actually, I got so many, I think I'm gonna make a whole bunch and then seal it with super, hot water and just seal it and have pickles later.
Can you put beans and stuff? I know you said chili. Can you put beans in the canning, like if you put meat and stuff?
Yep. So like some of the stuff that I've done in the past helping people, cause like I remember my aunt, we would be nipping beans and she'd be putting them in her jars and
Do you mean green beans or like?
green beans.
No, pinto, like pinto
See,
beans.
there's something about the gases in beans that you would need to Google that one.
Okay.
'Cause
Yeah.
There's actually pressure in beans.
Yeah.
So be careful with that one.
I just freeze them.
Yeah, I
And freeze
just freeze
beans.
them or just leave them dry until I'm ready to use them.
Okay.
Yeah. But that would be interesting to look them up. They're when you get your little manual things, look in there and see if there's one with beans.
For sure.
Because that'd be a handy thing.
I have a question. When you're doing water canning, can you put the jars right on the bottom, or do they have to be up on a rack or something?
The way that
They come with a rack, and I'm not sure what it's for.
I think the rack is a safety measure for it. Although I have on the bottom of ours, the water bath one, I think it's got little ridges. I don't know what yours.
Yeah, they do have little ridges. I think it has to do with heating evenly. I think, and mine has handles on it, so I can like take all the jars out, which I would never do. That would be terrifying to me. If
They'd all
take
fall
one
on the
at a
floor,
time. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
reading that you can just put a cloth in the bottom of like a stock pot and use that for water bath
Oh,
canning,
Okay,
and that'll keep it off the bottom.
yeah, I think it's a heating thing. Something
that's a good
heating.
idea.
Because the one I bought at Menards, it's up about an inch, and then you try to put a tall jar in there, and to get the water to cover it, it's splattering everywhere out the top, and it's like, why would you need to have it an inch off of the bottom and waste all that space? I don't
Yeah.
understand.
I don't know. It's a patent thing. I don't know. Any other good questions? That's all I had for you guys.
That's great, that's
awesome.
good.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want to give my telephone number out, feel free to give me a call if you think of something.
I'll email you all the manual and phone number.
Yeah. And then you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And just so you all know, there is going to be a pickling class here on Wednesday, August 30th at 1 o'clock, and it's a hands-on. So you'll be chopping and helping make the brine and pour the brine and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's a
And you should come too, because you'll have some good insight in the class. It'll be more of a conversation. It'll be good.
Unfortunately, I can't make that.
Aw.
That's okay.
Well-
You guys will get an e-bite, so you can always just.
Well, and if you have the video, you can maybe watch it later too.
Dad did dill pickles a lot. I mean, he did a lot of dill pickles, and we're gonna have to search Mom's recipes to find his recipe. Yeah,
Yeah.
he learned vinegar 1 year. The vinegar he bought was bad. It was the whole batch.
Oh my
That whole
God.
year was bad.
Wow. I've never heard of that.
Careful with the vinegar. It's gotta be, I think, 4%.
Oh, now,
not 5%.
They're changing it. I was reading about that. A lot of people that have been pickling have been having issues because they changed the percentage of the vinegar
Yeah,
yeah,
that is sold in stores, and it's causing a lot of issues for
look at the
people.
jug.
Yeah.
And never use cleaning vinegar, because that's 6%, but it's not food safe.
oh my goodness, I had no idea.